Good afternoon. What a pleasure to sit here together again. Of course, also many people watching us and following us online, but it's also with the group before us. Very happy to see each other in the audience again. Today, this session will be busy with the connection of space data and community, and understanding, of course, the risk and what you can do with this. Data, big data are piling up, especially space data, spatial data. A lot of experts are busy to understand and to learn better how to manage these data, how to work with these data. And on the other hand, of course, everybody around the world gets his mobile, gets access to data. And then, of course, the big challenge is how can we combine this together? There's this big feeling that there is a huge potential to increase and improve risk management by bringing the data to the people. But of course, there's the challenge, because, and we heard that also in the lecture before us, trust. Trust is so important. I think everybody knows this feeling of getting a wet shoot, too wet because the weather forecast was wrong. And after 3 weather forecasts, you maybe decide to remove the application from your phone because you don't trust it anymore. And that is, of course, a major challenge. How to get the data to the people, to the communities in a trustworthy way that it will be used. We have 3 experts in this session who will help us to discuss these things. 2 are online and 1 is pre-recorded. We start with Dr. Pirawan. Maybe you should pronounce your second name yourself. I will not try that. Dr. Pirawan is the director of the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center, the Information Center, and he is also leading the Severe Mekong Delta program. The Severe program tries to connect with the governments of the different countries to get spatial data into the decision making and to work on and to improve the decision making and the importance of the data at ground level. Dr. Pirawan, he will explain it, of course, himself, but he will talk about the drought management and the connection with the agriculture. Dr. Pirawan, can I invite you?
Sure. Thank you, Jan-Jaap. And you said my name correctly. Don't worry about the family name. It's too long anyway. Okay. Just want to check if you can hear me okay in the room. Great, perfect. Yes, so perfect. Just want to say hi also to the colleagues and audience in the room. Again, my name is Pirawan. I'm leading the Department of Geospatial Information at the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center. We are an intergovernmental organization based in Bangkok, Thailand, working to support stakeholders on disaster risk management and climate resilience. So today, my specific topic will be on just aligning with the theme of the session here. I'm going to talk about connecting space to community by bringing an example from the if you can see my screen on the slideshow mode. All right.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Great, perfect. So the work that I'm going to be covering in the next 10 minutes is part of the project called Severe Mekong that Jan-Jaap had already introduced briefly. So this is this is a global initiative, right, spanning throughout the world. It's supported by the US government under US aid framework, but it also brought NASA to come on board to provide technical support to the so-called geospatial hubs or severe hubs across the world. We have hubs in South America, in the western and eastern side of Africa. one in the Himalaya region, and here in this region, the Mekong region, we are hosted by the Asian Disaster Preparedness Center based in Bangkok. And this is a truly global effort. With the knowledge and models and tools are being shared across the globe. The knowledge, the learning from Africa can be applied in some contexts with the Asia partners through our hub. And I'm gonna just share with you some of the examples that we have done successfully here, just to give you an appetite of what can be done, but then we can discuss more toward the end of the session. So as I said before, in the Mekong cover 5 countries, including Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, PDR, Cambodia, and Vietnam. We are very much outcome oriented. And you will see in a little bit on how that is important. Jan Yap, you see that Delta Rest is also part of the team here. My colleague in Delta Rest had already mentioned that he had a team in Singapore, but we have not met before. Hopefully we can connect more. But the goal of severe hubs across the globe is to establish sustainability on how users can continue to use geospatial data, satellite data long-term, even after the life of the project. So that has been built into the way that we design activities and programs. And one thing that I want to show you today as an example of success is on drought risk. This is a very important aspect for us in Southeast Asia, particularly because someone had said that the areas in Thailand, Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar have been the rice bowl of the world. Basically, the major rice production for not only for the region, but also because of the export. We produce and provide export rice across the globe. And what we are concerned on is that climate impact on the production of drought could be cascading, impacting not only in the country, but it can be felt regionally as well as globally. And that had happened before. Not too long ago, about 5 years back, there was a major drought in the Mekong Delta, Mekong region, and that had already cost over $1.7 billion in total losses in Thailand, and that affected almost 10 million people. And in Vietnam, they suffer a little bit less impact, but still more than 2 million people were impacted. So now how do we help them? How do we use technology to help farmers ensure that their rice production can be maintained? So we started out looking at this kind of impact pathway. Typically, scientists will think about what tools, what data can be provided to the users and hope that they can use it. But our approach was slightly different. We look at the end game first. We look at the end product, which is to improve food security, and then walk backward. How do we improve food security? We have to help them ensure that production and production loss can be mitigated. How can they achieve that? They need information. Like farmers need to be informed of drought or floods or any climatic events that could happen and impact their production.
I think that we lost connection at the moment. Are we going to wait for that, or what is the plan? What do you suggest? Okay, so we still have connection with you, Dr. Chen?
Yeah, okay.
Are you online? Yes, you are.
Yes, I'm on.
I see you. So maybe we.
Back.
Can you hear me now?
Think. Oh.
Yes, we can hear you.
Sorry, this slide was okay?
Okay. You can continue now.
We are back.
Sorry, the internet connection just picked a bad day. But we are developing a tool that help users to understand the risk from drought from different kinds of perspective. On the time frame, we look at the past, we look at what is happening now, also what could happen 3 months from
Yes.
now.
Can you show your slides? We don't see your slides anymore.
Can you show your screen?
Hold on.
Okay.
Sorry about this technology
No problem,
glitch.
no problem. We are talking about technologies and how get it to the people. That is not so easy.
Okay.
Yeah. So can you see it now?
Yeah, so we
Oh,
were
yes,
with
we can see that.
we were with your slide on the food security. This one,
This one.
yes.
This one.
Yes,
So
yes.
I will not repeat it. Just want to say that the whole impact chain needs to be studied and understood before we even design our intervention. And our intervention, sorry for keep flipping it. We look at first what kind of data gap that exists in this region. We were told that drought forecasting was there, but it was kind of fragmented. Some of the tools look at hydrological drought. Some of the tools look at only rainfall scarcity. So we are providing a comprehensive tool that look at all aspects of drought, from hydrological, meteorological, agricultural droughts, also from different time scale, from what had happened in the past, what is the drought condition today, what could be the drought condition 3 months from now. Then last but not the least, incorporating climate change scenarios, what could be the outlook of drought and the impact of it in the long-term future. And then taking it in one step further, we are estimating rice yield as a proxy of food security that could be an issue for this region. Capacity development is an important aspect, and the way that we do capacity development is not only to provide training, but we take inputs from the users on what their needs, what their capacity gaps are, and design a tailor-made capacity development program. And that involves lectures, but a more important aspect of our capacity development was the co-development work. Basically sitting down and working on problems together, developing tools, coding the tools together with the end users and stakeholders. And that has been proven to be very successful. The capacity has been maintained and sustained in the stakeholders that we are working with. I want to touch upon quickly, sorry, I don't know what's wrong with the slide, but the legal framework is another important aspect that will help us achieve the sustainability. So we build capacity, but then policymakers need to adopt our intervention into mainstream it into their everyday work. So we were able to work with the Mekong River Commission to put our tools into the long-term strategy, to put our tool into the online web portal, which provide drought forecasts. And then at the national level, we work with Vietnam to provide drought bulletins to one of the provinces, which is now the part that I want to quickly touch upon, which is the community part of the equation that we have from space to community, right? We work with national government, but that's still not reaching the end user to create impact. So we pick a province in Vietnam as a demonstration case to apply the technology and tools and knowledge that we have developed with at the regional level and also at the national level. Now engaging with subnational provincial organizations, NGOs, as well as the farmers themselves to build that capacity to be able to use this kind of information. And we learned firsthand that space information, space technology may not be applicable for people really on the ground. So we turn the information into something much simpler for them, such as bulletin boards or announcement through a loudspeaker in the community for them to use. And this is very important because for them to be able to use and understand it, you need to tailor that information down really to the community level. So this is a demonstration case, but what we are really aiming for is to scale and replicate the work. We started out in Vietnam. We are aiming to replicate that in other countries in the region, but we are also hopeful that we can expand it and replicate it as a case study to other regions, other countries outside of the Mekong. Some of our partners like UNSCAP, or the World Food Program and FAO had already expressed interest in working with us to replicate this work. So partnership will be key to really bring space to the community. Again, sorry for the interruption on my internet. Hopefully this will give you some basic information of what we can do to bring space to community. I'll be happy to take on any questions that come after. Thank you very much. Back to you, Jan Jaap.
Thank you so much, Dr. Piranam. Very interesting. Partnership is the key to bringing the data to the communities. We will do the questions later after the after that everybody just has given a presentation, and we'll come back to you. We will now move to Dr. Chen Futong. He's the Safety Chief Engineer of ZTE. He's based in China, and ZTE is a global player in telecommunication and information technology. Dr. Chen, he is the inventor of and the promoter also of the Transparent City system, expert on the National Disaster Reduction Center, and an expert in a lot of think tanks and other associations and institutes. We are very happy that you will explain what it means, the transparent city, what you can do with it, and how it is used and starting in China to be used in the disaster risk management. Dr. Chen, can I give you the floor?
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we see it perfectly.
Okay, now I will begin. Hello everyone, I'm Chen Futong from ZTE in China. It's my honor to be able to participate in today's meeting. I am the initiator of the concept of the transparent city, and in my opinion, we should conduct the transparent management and control of the city. We should manage the city from 3 kilometers above the ground and 15 to 500 meters underground. And we should use a lot of methods to monitoring the city, such as the satellites in space, airplanes in the and the UAVs in the sky, video surveillance on the ground, and Internet of Things and other sensors to obtain the monitoring data and the fully monitor of the city, the countryside, and the nature. We should conduct the transparent management and control of the cities and the risks, and timely monitoring and early warning of the risks and the disasters. And in my transparent city, I emphasize the transparency in 10 directions, just as you can see on this page. And in my transparent city, you can see and you can know everything happening in the city. You will know who, when, and where, who is doing something. And so the transparency in these 10 directions applies not only to the city management and services, but also to the risks and the disasters management. And here, I recommend a document that is the Chinese experience of disaster risk management completed by the World Bank. And we hope that you can learn something from it. And in my transparent city, I think there are 10 directions to manage the city risks and disasters, including the basic risk data collection, and to build the information platform, use the big data, conduct the disaster management, public education, make city planning in advance, advanced disaster prevention project planning, technical management of the potential risks, the scientific command, and the response capabilities. And in China, we often divide the disaster events into 4 major categories, including the nature disasters, accidents, social security, and public health events. And you can see the disasters happened in China is we have a lot of events happening in China. And the Chinese government is very concerned about the disaster risk management and has established a complete emergency command system from the country to the province, to the cities, to the counties, and to the villages and the communities. In China, we have established a complete emergency management system which can carry out the entire process of the emergency management both for the peacetime and the wartime. In order to quick response to the emergencies across the country and to reduce the disaster losses, China has also established 6 regional rescue centers and 12 emergency mapping bases across the country. And the Chinese has built a space-ground integrated emergency command platform at all levels of government using the satellite, remote sensing, UAV integrated, video conference, and other IoT sensors. These emergency command platforms are very practical. The command centers at all levels can carry out cross-level commands, and they can be used for different events. And this is the overall architecture of the emergency command platform are designed for the whole country, including the front-end IoT sensors, command centers, emergency command vehicle, the networks, command platforms, communication platforms, satellite equipment, the software such as the map system, the data warehouse, and a lot of business applications. And my transparent city emphasizes the daily management of the cities and the risks and the wartime command based on one map. And for the communities and the villages, at the same time, China is actively promoting the disaster reduction communities and the community emergency service granting centers, which integrates the community emergency command center, public broadcasting station, fire station, emergency material reserve center, and the safety knowledge classroom. It is very practical for the communities and the villages. And at the present, the community emergency service grantee centers in Wuhan and in Jinan is the best in China. And in order to solve the problem of emergency communications after an emergency occurs, I have wrote a standard for an emergency backpack plan in China. It contains one mobile phone and 2 satellite phones in one package, which are directly configured to the villages and the communities. This emergency communication backpack is very cheap, and the village and the communities can also afford it. They can report the situation and call for help after an emergency event. And in order to solve the national emergency response problem, I'm promoting the construction of a socialized emergency rescue linkage grantee platform in China. I hope to cooperate with all the partners and enterprises and institutions in the society based on one map and a platform. And okay, this is the end of my speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chen. I think this is a very clear example of what kind of data you all need for disaster management. and far more than only spatial data. And beside that, I'm impressed with the emergency backpack, as you call it, full with communication equipment, and very interesting to understand. I will postpone the questions till all the presentations have been there. Thank you so much. We will come back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Then the next presentation is a pre-recorded presentation. It's coming from New York, and the time difference with New York is quite substantial, and it was too difficult to do that in the middle of the night. This Dr. Andrew. He's from the International Research Institute from Columbia University. Dr. Andrew is part of the Environmental Monitoring Program and a disaster team, and he is helping with the connection of environmental remote sensing data to the early warning systems and up to into the human health, humanitarian aid, agriculture, and disasters. He is also leading the ERI data library, which develops mapping rooms, which can be which are of great help during disasters and assisting the humanitarian community. For example, the Red Cross. He will speak about the observation data, the spatial observation data in relation to flooding, and also about the trustworthiness, about the accounting of using this data and the consequences, especially the unanticipated consequences of using these data in the real world. Please start the recording.
Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Kruchkevich. I apologize I cannot be with you all today. I'm calling you from New York, where it's, well, right now the recording is not early in the morning, but it will be when you're viewing this recording, quite early in the morning here in New York. I am part of the International Research Institute for Climate Society here at Columbia University, which is part of the Columbia Climate School. I also have positions at the Red Cross Red Crescent Climate Center, and am co-director of the Columbia Climate School Sustainable and Resilient Living in an Area of Increasing Disasters Network. Today, we'll be discussing the challenges, of going from space to community, down to decision making. What does that mean? What are some of the opportunities? What does it mean in practice? To move from satellite data becoming more available towards integrating that data into decision making in a sustainable way. So the structure of the talk will be as follows. Start off just with a bit of a background on elements of weather and climate data. Then we'll talk about integrating the weather data into humanitarian decision making, and then reflecting a little bit in current and future trends. So first, I wanted to start off with this. Talking a bit about seasonal climate. What does that mean? Especially, what are the roles in satellite data within our understanding of seasonal climate? And it's quite important. I would say now, almost every map or derived product regarding climate has some element of satellite data. Now, this could vary from product to product, of course. For example, here, this is a map which depicts the days per month with measurable rainfall for October. This is a snapshot of seasonal climate of what October is like all around the world. Now, this product is wrong inherently. What I mean by that is that it's not intended to be perfect. It's intended to give us an idea of what we can expect. But is this necessarily a forecast? Looking back at the historical record, is that a forecast? And is it useful to make decisions based on this historical data? Now, on the bottom, we have the same product, same data product, but it shows February. And we see some differences. For example, we see in Northern South America, we see in October we still see rainfall, days with rainfall, but then we see many days of rainfall, almost every day in parts of the Amazon there. Now, again, we see shifts here from October to February in seasonal climate in terms of precipitation. But again, this is not intended to be a perfect product. It's intended to have uncertainty. It's intended to be quote unquote wrong, but it is still useful to some degree. So is this a forecast? Now, we also have seasonal climate shifts. This product on the left is answering the question, if La Nina is occurring, where and when are shifts in rainfall likely? And we could see on the map in the green areas are where we see shifts to wetter than average conditions. And in yellow, we see where we see shifts in drier to drier than average conditions when we have a La Nina. Also on this map, we see the months where we tend to see those shifts. Now, this is important too, because we are in a La Nina period. We have seen a declaration of La Nina, which I believe some of you may be familiar with, but is the La Nina and El Nino refer to changes in the equatorial Pacific Ocean, which leads to changes in climate on a global scale. But again, like, is this enough? Is this sort of product sufficient to make decisions? It's not intended to be perfect, but it does provide some information that could be useful for decision making. Now we have other tools. We have seasonal climate forecasts. On the left here is a product we develop at IRI in Columbia University. And on the right, we have one developed by, well, this is actually the C3S system. And this is accessed from the ECMWF webpage, European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecast. These are both trusted forecast products. We see some patterns that are similar. We also see some patterns that are a bit different. So if we look at Northern South America again, we see the forecast saying that, well, the forecast on the left from IRI is saying more mixed signals. You know, we see some greens, we see some browns, we see some yellows, mixed signals. And this can be an indication of perhaps a bit more uncertainty in the forecast of what's actually going to happen. And if we look towards the forecast on the right, we see very strong signals, consistent, of green, dark green, which indicate above average risk of, or increased risk of above average rainfall. Now, these are both trusted products, and it's important to think about, well, do we have any other products that should be considered? And the answer is yes. Here is the Karakov forecast product, which is the regional forecast product developed for the Caribbean and Northern South America. And here we see increased odds of above normal conditions for precipitation. Now, reflecting on the question, if we have all this data, which is the best and which one do we trust? And I'm asking the second question specifically because sometimes the best is not necessarily the one we trust and vice versa. Sometimes the best is not the most skillful because there's different types of decisions that require different levels of skill. Sometimes the best and the most trusted is not the forecast that is mandated by a government agency, for example. So how do we deal with different types of information that have high levels of quality but may be different? This is one of the critical elements when we're talking about integrating data, especially satellite data, into decision making. And here's the current seasonal forecast. I just wanted to show this because I encourage everyone to focus on the area of interest. So this is saying over the next 3-month period, December, January, February, we have increased chance of above normal rainfall in areas such as the Philippines and 2 parts of Indonesia and Northern Australia. But then also we have increased chances of below average conditions, for example, in South Korea, Southern Japan, and also parts of Nepal. So this is one piece of information that could help inform decision making, but there's a lot of uncertainty in this product. And that takes us into the second part, integrating model data into decision making, information for decision making. Some key takeaway points we'll talk about. Mandates do not equal trust, do not equal use necessarily. Sometimes they could, but not necessarily. Data availability is far from the use of it, and use does not mean trust, especially in complex humanitarian contexts. Uncertainty should be embraced is something that I have seen conveniently ignored in many contexts, and that is, it is irresponsible to do that. Uncertainty allows us to make decisions and make forecasts, and this should be embraced and better understood. It's not easy though. And then dissemination of data, products, and tools, satellite derived especially. This is not necessarily integration. Could be detrimental. It's not always a net benefit to disseminate data into a decision-making context. And also there's many questions about accountability of influencing decisions, especially decisions that the data scientist or the translator between the data and the decision, if it's not understood the potential repercussions for becoming involved in that context. What are the accountability structures? Many times these are very blurry. So I wanted to present a couple of case studies. This one is in the Rohingya refugee camp. On the left, this is a picture I took of Camp 10 in Kutupalong. I was supporting IOM, International Organization of Migration for Migration, and UNDP, the United Nations Development Program, in their activities for disaster risk management in the Rohingya refugee camp. I believe many of you are aware of this situation. It is ongoing, it is protracted. But back during the main influx, I believe it's about 3-4 years ago, there were many questions about where to prioritize. You know, where can different hazards occur? Where do we go first, and how do we deprioritize other areas? I mean, this is a refugee camp. However, it has upwards of 800,000 people. So some people will be helped first, and deciding where that is done demands an understanding of the data, the limitations of the data especially. So moving data into decision-making. Step 0, what questions are currently asked? And these are the questions that came out. Working with the Intersector Coordination Group, which is the entity that was responsible for making decisions on disaster risk management in the refugee camp, these were some of the primary questions they were thinking about and trying to understand. Where can floods occur? What type of floods? And where can landslides occur? And myself, being asked to support just unpacking those questions and trying to understand what information is most appropriate or best or most trusted, it became quite clear that this wasn't a situation where data was lacking. In fact, it was quite the opposite. There are many data sets available and many discussions around which data on floods and landslides should be prioritized, should be trusted and integrated into decision-making. And it was very complicated. Here on the screen are examples of some of the flood products that were available to the Intersector Coordination Group in the Rohingya refugee camp. So quickly, like myself, I was faced with a challenge. What do I do as a scientist from New York? Do I pick one? Do I try to assess the quality of one or more of these products? And it quickly became clear that this wasn't the role for me there. It was more about understanding the decision-making context. And on the top left, this was a tool that we developed to assess what are the questions that are being asked, what are the current types of data, many of them satellite derived, integrated into addressing specific disaster risk management related questions. What is the source? How was integrating this data justified? And then what actions were taken, and that was key. So on the top left, we developed something called a decision-making flowchart, which helped us, along with the Intersector Coordination Group, understand these elements, and then allow us to have discussions about what data should and should not be integrated into decision-making contexts. We have a book chapter that I can send for those that are interested in learning more. And also in one of the workshops we facilitated, there is a report which I took a screenshot of in the bottom left. So the second project that we will talk about is an ongoing project looking at flash flood risk in Ecuador. This is an ongoing project which is funded by NASA and also related to the Group on Earth Observations. And it's called Global Flash Flood Early Warning and Anticipatory Action. So I didn't want to show too much on the data side, but on the left, we are working on preliminary simulations of flash flood risk to inform the first flash flood early action protocol. An early action protocol is a mechanism that the Red Cross uses to allow for forecasts to be linked to pots of funding that are directed for specific actions to reduce risk of impact for specific hazards. So this has been done in various places. This map you see here, you could see have been 6 early action protocols triggered, 17 approved, others under development, but flash floods has been a hazard that has been difficult to develop one of these for. So this is all about moving from availability of flash flood risk data to integrating it into standard operating procedures, integrating it into decision-making that could lead to action that could protect lives and livelihoods. And we're making progress. I mean, I wanted to give shout out to the team. This is a 4-year project. We're approaching the last year. We do have a few papers published, such as the one in the bottom left, which is open source and can be accessed. But yeah, this is one of the challenges, and it's taking us, it's more than just developing maps and simulations. It's really about understanding what decisions are being made and how data can and cannot inform appropriate actions taken by groups that have the responsibility to do it. So in this case, working with the Ecuador Red Cross and also INAMI, which is the Ecuador Meteorological and Hydrological Institute. So thanks, giving a shout out to my team here for all the awesome work. So just leaving it here, trends, talking about risk as a privilege, understanding risk is a privilege, and this is something that should be just more normalized in our discussion of risk. Some other questions that I'm thinking about and that I would be interested in others' thoughts on: to what extent should the data developer and/or disseminator or translator be accountable for the use of climate weather model data, risk data? What happens when official data differs from the best or perceived best or sufficient data? This happens quite a lot. And then also, something else to think about if we're talking about risk communication, especially when we have binary decisions of taking action or not. What are the thresholds of forecast certainty or uncertainty that could lead to the output being interpreted as misinformation? This is something that I've seen change over the past few years, a relationship to information and misinformation, and it's definitely present in the disaster risk community as well. So thank you for your time. I'm open to any questions. My email is at the bottom left, and I wish you all a great day and a great conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Andrew. As Andrew already indicated, the questions to him will be collected. Please post them in the chat. Will be collected and will be sent to him by email, and he will reply to you by email. Then we move to the other 2 speakers and look at the screen and see if we have already got some questions in. And one of the first questions is here of Minnie Chu, and this is about the capacity building. What are the issues? What are the issues with the co-development and with the capacity building? What are the important issues that you have to tackle to build a trustworthy partnership and so that the whole system starts to work? Dr. Chen, can I start with you? Would you have? I think I saw all the people, all the command centers. That's a lot of training. That's a lot of capacity building. You also have to reach the people. What are the big issues to get this going?
We have set up a lot of command centers in China for different level governments, and the people can call for the help when they have any troubles happen in their ordinary life, and we can do a lot of things to help the ordinary people. We have we have different rescue teams, equipments, and other technologies to help them, and we can supply them with a lot of methods to reduce the disaster happens.
Okay. And also, Dr. Piranam, you were explaining already. You did a lot of capacity building. What were your lessons learned? What were the things that were not the right direction, and what were the things that were good directions to go for the capacity building?
Sure. Thank you, Jan Yap. And this is a very good question. When you walk into any ministry, say in Cambodia or in Vietnam, you will learn that there have been offered a number of training sessions already, I mean, from those stakeholders. Sometimes you learn also that some of the sessions were not very useful for them because they were not tailored for them. I think the most important thing that we have to keep in mind before we start even thinking about capacity enhancement is to understand the needs and the level of existing capacity each of your intended targets have. And that may vary from ministry to ministry, from department to department. But that will be a key information for you to tailor your training. You may have a core part of your training, but it has to be adjustable, flexible enough to touch upon the level of needs and level of capacity that each of the organization has. And that had been our first-hand experience. Sometimes we forgot to tailor way back. We did not really tailor our training. We just used the training that was successful in another context to apply in a different context. And we found that it was too difficult for the new set of users. So that gave us a big lesson that know your subjects first before even thinking about delivering on any training.
Clear. Do we have any questions here from the audience? Any questions here? I see a lot of smiling faces as well. Perhaps everything was clear. Also, the questions in the chat are not a lot at this moment. So, but I have some questions myself. Dr. Chen, I was very impressed with all the complexity that was already there, and I quickly thought about virtual worlds, digital twins. Is that part of also your thinking, to have the transparency and do some piloting and testing in the virtual world?
Yes, you can see that. And the digital twin world, it means that we set up a mirror world in the IT. And for the transparency in the city, I think it is I emphasized it's I emphasized the 10 directions transparency, and I emphasized the everything is the same in the virtual room, and I think I emphasized the what is the English word? I think it's all the same with in the virtual city and to the accurate city.
Yeah, so the virtual city might also be an important part of the capacity building, to understand how things are working, how things are connecting, and how it relates to the real world.
Yes, it's a little similar to the digital twins and the digital twin city.
Yes. But what intrigued me also were your numbers. You talked about 3,000 meter up, 500 meter down. When I'm thinking about spatial data, I think about 30 kilometers up. But what do these numbers mean? Why 3,000 and why 500?
300 means that we can control the airplanes flying in the sky and the climates and the other things in the sky above our head. And for the 50 to 500 meters underground, we can control the resources and the our other equipments under the ground, and that is we can see the disasters under the ground, that we should manage that.
Okay, okay, understand. Yes, yes, yes. Of course, I was also very interested in the topic of food security, which is incredibly important. And you were looking into the future, into the global change. I worked a lot myself in Southeast Asia and cities like Jakarta, in Java and Vietnam, but also in the Philippines. And what you see basically two things in this. The farmers are getting older because the younger generation tends to go to the city. And of course this capacity building and maybe these new modern techniques are very important to keep them. And second is you see the growing cities, which really get into the agricultural areas, and you see a huge decrease of agricultural land. Do you have any idea what is a larger change at the moment? Do you expect the global change brings a larger change than the local change, like expanding cities and changing of habitats of farmers, or you think everything stays the same? Basically, in your presentation, everything stays the same, but we have to manage the droughts and the rain. Did you look into that system? Local change, global change?
No, I have to admit that we did not look into that very important aspect. In our analysis, we assume that everything else remained the same.
Yes.
The only big change that we put into the model is climate change. But this socio-economic impact and change, I totally agree with you, will play a huge, sometimes even bigger role to production of crops, on the food security at the local and even the global scale, sometimes it's more than physical aspect of climate impact and the crop itself. But unfortunately, we have not been able to look into that, but we'll be happy to discuss with you further on that aspect.
Yeah, because of course Andrew, Dr. Andrew, he said, okay, we approached it a little bit, we were asking the questions. What are the questions of the government, of the decision maker? And these are the questions. You also said, okay, what is food security? And then you reverse the system to say, okay, what do we need to do? And you were talking with the government, but yeah, maybe it's good to understand what the government wants to do. What are the main questions? Is it urbanization? Is it the change of the farmer generations, or is it the global change? What is on their mind?
Totally agree with you. It just so happened that the department under the Ministry of Agriculture that we work with so far has been focusing on the impact of drought on the production of rice. But there are other aspects, like you said, that would come into play as well, but we have not touched upon that yet.
Good, yes. I understand. Look if we have some more questions. Some more questions from the audience? Yes, a question from the audience.
Thank you. Thank you, panelists. I'm not sure whether you can see me, but my question is directed to Dr. Piranan. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. I'm wondering to what extent you can, or to what scales you can relay geospatial data down to local or regional levels. I thought it was very interesting that you're able to provide real-time data monitoring, but I'm wondering at what level of decision-making this is useful for, perhaps in the Mekong region, for example.
Sure. That is a very valid question. Thank you very much. And you said my name correctly, so don't worry. So I'll be honest with you, for our effort, we first target at the regional level, working with regional organizations that spans across different nations in the region. We try to go down from regional to national with, against the same level of success, where we work with the national government in Vietnam. Once we decide to go deeper than that, from the national government down to provincial and really down to the farmers, that's where we face some challenges, big challenges. First, in terms of the level of capacity for subnational and on-the-ground level users to absorb and understand geospatial data. That is a big issue. But also on the really local interest, the mindset of people on the ground, farmers are quite different from policymakers at the national level. So we try to overcome that by partnering with some NGOs that have already been embedded themselves, working with the people on the ground to tailor the kind of messages, tailor the kind of intervention that we bring. It was successful at the national level, but it was not so successful at the community level, to tone it down, simplify it, and make it work better at the local level. But quick answer to your question is that it works very well at the national level, less well at the subnational and community level.
Thank you so much. I think we are nearly at the end of our session. Please post your questions to the chat because they will be sent to the presenters and they will reply and answer your questions later on. Dr. Piranan, Dr. Cheng, Dr. Andrew, I really want to thank you so much. I hope to see you alive or in person soon around, and I want to thank you so much. I give it back to the organization.